I'm a mechanical engineering technologist.
Maybe you could share your emotions, your doubts, and how it all happened.
I first got into this about 17 or 18 years ago, when there were ads for binary options. That scam, that whole thing,
See, there's that smile on your face right away. Go on, go on.
like a cornered dog, I didn't have much to lose, so I shoved my pride aside and just traded with the market.
Are you planning to keep trading? Maybe open a bigger account? What are your plans?
I'm smiling now because I found an opportunity like Upscale. Otherwise, I'd probably be crying bitter tears somewhere in a corner.
I'm happy to welcome everyone to the Offscale channel. As always, I'm Igor Fox, and today we have a guest whose story just can't be left untold. He had all his money taken, scammers stole his apartment, and his computer burned down. But hope remained, thanks to prop trading from Upscale. By purchasing the challenge for just $18, Anton has already withdrawn more than $5,000. If you're here for the first time, prop trading it's when a company gives you capital to manage, so you can maximize your trading strategies and your potential without risking your own money. Let's get to know Anton and find out what motivated him to keep going. Let's go. Please welcome Anton. Tell us, please, how did it happen that you ended up here for an interview with us? And accordingly, tell us about yourself. What do you do? Where do you live?
How did I end up at the interview? First, I got to know Upscale, made my first withdrawal, then my second withdrawal. And then I was offered to do an interview. At first, it was just a voice message, just to share my experience. What's useful, what's not, specifically for Upscale. What kind of features could be invented to make things easier for traders and also improve communication between moderators and people in general. Then I told my story, explained how I got to know Upscale and so on. And then Constantine suggested doing an interview. He said, "Your story's kind of instructive and interesting. Would you like to do an interview?" I didn't refuse because anyone could end up in a situation like this. These days, there are so many scammers all over the CIS countries. Just a ton, unbelievably many. That's why I want to make sure no one else ends up in this kind of situation. And
So, tell us a bit about yourself so our audience understands who we're interviewing. How old are you? Where do you live? What do you do?
I'm 38 years old. I work as a mechanical engineering technologist, but that's only been for the last 4 years, working in my field. Before that, I worked for 15 years in pharmaceuticals, all kinds of mistakes. I've seen it all, every FOMO, FUD, strategy, hundreds, thousands, I've tried them all. So I can tell you exactly where not to go. I used to live in Kazakhstan. Mostly everyone in our group I see is mainly from Russia. Then honestly, even my own group that I run, everyone's Russian. There's really no one to share my experience with, not even anyone to talk to locally. It's all purely online.
All right, I got you. So, look, it turns out you're a mechanical engineering technologist, but somehow fate brought you into trading. And I'm curious, what kind of experience do you actually have in trading? How many years have you been in it, and what have you managed to try along the way?
I've got about 17 or 18 years of experience. I first got into it when there were ads for binary options. That whole scam, the whole... Back then, I thought it was a real exchange, but actually... Let me explain in more detail for beginners. Don't get involved. These are just typical bucket shops, as they're called. They don't have access to real exchanges, or they're also known as dealing centers, and so on. The very first ones, when those ads started showing up, it was about 15 or 16 years ago. They completely flooded all the CIS countries, Russia and neighboring countries. Basically, they were everywhere, just all over the place. So I decided to give it a try. I've always had a technical mindset, so I decided to test it out. Started off just looking at the raw chart. Then, of course, all sorts of guru indicators and a ton of other junk started popping up, just cluttering your head and not really giving you anything useful. The only thing you really learn is how not to do things. Basically, every possible mistake, every possible blunder you could make, I made them all. I made every mistake you could possibly make.
So, what happened after binary options?
After binary options, I ended up joining a group. This was even before blockchain and all that became a thing. It was pretty common across the CIS countries. Even Binance wasn't around yet, or at least it hadn't launched. This was around 2018 or 2019, if I'm not mistaken. But at that time, Binance still wasn't available in Kazakhstan. I found this one website, the only one that doesn't try to push stuff on you. No nonsense, no scams or anything like that. The guy who runs it is also pretty technical minded. Started his own site. I'm not going to advertise it, but if anyone's interested, I can look it up and send it in a private message. There. They went over strategies, hourly, 4-hour, oil trading, medium term up to 6 months. Basically, MACD, Bollinger 100, stochastic, RSI, and all sorts of others. Indicators like that, wave, moving averages, simple moving averages, and so on. There's a ton of them. You could really get into it. There was a separate journal where you could share your own experience. And thousands, not even thousands, probably tens of thousands of screenshots. How do you work with strategies the right way? A really knowledgeable person would come in and show everything based on their own experience. That's how I first learned about binaries, and then gradually switched over to Binance.
So, am I understanding correctly that you started with binary options and then you began learning the basics about indicators, about these pillars of trading, like keeping a trading journal, developing your own trading strategy, and then moved on to trading cryptocurrencies? So, what happened during the cryptocurrency stage?
Binary options aren't really trading. Here, I started making mistakes again. I had to adapt once more, because it's a whole different ballgame. I never knew before that things could drop so much. Altcoins can go down by as much as 99%. That was definitely something new for me. And for the first time, I got on Binance. Maybe a lot of people would envy that now, but honestly, there wasn't much to envy. I came in and hit the absolute bottom of the market. I bought Bitcoin at $3,500, just $200 worth, because that's all I had. But who could have known it would go up to $100? And then you started creating groups. Because I didn't have any experience in crypto or anything like that. So I started making groups and began listening to all sorts of these fools. Sorry for the expression, just anyone and everyone. I listened to all that talk about alt season. By the way, this isn't the first time we've heard about alt season. It happens every 4 years. Well, now it's been 5, but it keeps repeating. Basically, nothing ever changes. Everyone goes through the same emotions. Newbies come in and lose everything. Then the more experienced ones show up and take all their money. And that's how it is. That's how I got on Binance. I bought for $250. I bought Bitcoin for $3,500 with $200. I also listened to all that talk about alt season. I put everything into Litecoin. And then it started. Giving one thing, then another, then a third. Basically, then I decided
Yeah, the fourth one is a bonus.
the fourth one is a bonus, yeah. Then I met this one guy. I paid him 50,000 tenge. At that time, the ruble was 5 tenge, so that's 10,000 rubles. I paid him, just to get some understanding, babisit. But at that time, that was my salary, my whole salary back then. I didn't really learn anything useful or special there. Didn't learn anything. The only thing, just some small tricks, like how fundamental analysis works in general. How to build up a long-term position. They told me that you need to analyze what the coin is used for, whether it has any connections to the real market, and so on. And they explained the most basic things. And that's all I got out of it. Nothing else. I guess, yeah, that's it. I took just a tiny bit from there, but if I hadn't gotten even that, I definitely wouldn't have ended up believing in the market.
I know you had a pretty interesting situation, one that a lot of crypto investors could find themselves in. I mean, there's this coin called Bendy, and if it weren't for Schweiss, you would have bought it at a price of $3, $18, something like that. Can you share what happened back then, how you started buying it, and how it all ended?
Here I can give a more detailed account of all my futile expectations, and how I didn't hold on for just 2 more months. And I could have made a pile of cash off this. I got into the exchange when BNB was around $13. No, that's not true. It was actually about $22 back then. I don't remember exactly, but that's roughly what it was. I was accumulating this coin. Why was I accumulating it? I wrote out about 12 different factors for why I was buying in. First of all, it's used on the network, it's used to pay transaction fees, and there are affiliate programs based on it. Then it turns out the fees are reduced thanks to BNB. At that time, it was about 50%. Then it kept getting lower and lower. And every year, Launchpad and Launchpool decrease, and there's also the option to use it for travel bookings. And there are tons of other things. Basically, so I convinced myself to such an extent that I don't even know. It was supposed to skyrocket any minute, but for some reason, that just wasn't happening. I started buying it at 20, and I already thought it was at the bottom. Because compared to real Forex, you just don't see drawdowns like that there. 99% and so on. Is that true? Yeah, the kind of fundamentals I had already drawn up for myself. Downloaded and everything. I thought this coin was supposed to just take off to the moon, non-stop. Then there was a small crash, but Binance got hacked. That was the first time Binance was hacked, and after that, it never. As far as I remember, it wasn't hacked again. Naturally, the BNB token dropped, but CZ immediately reassured everyone, saying that no user data was affected, and only some shared service of theirs was impacted. So at that point, I bought in at $18. That was the correction to $18, and there were no further corrections. Yeah, after that, it started to grow, reached $33, and that was the peak back then. And it seemed like the bear market started after that. Then the drop started, not by the day, but by the hour. At first, it corrected down to about 9. I bought more at 9. I thought, well, whatever, at least something. Ah, screw it. I'll buy. I still believed, but when it started dropping to 6, 5, and 3, I got angry. I couldn't believe it. I thought, how did they hold on? I couldn't take it anymore. I thought, how is this possible with such opportunities, such prospects? What kind of scam is this, really? I kept holding, and then ended up selling for pennies. Basically, to put it bluntly, Bitcoin started to go up. It kept rising and rising. I thought everything should be going up, but only Bitcoin was growing, just like now, especially after December. Here's the most interesting part. Yeah, after December, just like now. After December, altcoins started to rise too, like Yaroslavs, roughly until spring, and the key news was why BNB in particular started to grow. It started growing by multiples, not just 10 or 20%. It was multiplying. It did 10 times from 33. The first big news was from Coinbase, that their shares were valued at $330, and at that moment, BNB went up to 30. No, actually, it didn't even have time to reach 30. It grew again from 3 to 20. It went up. And then right after 33, it started multiplying. So that's 30, then 100, 150, 300, and basically at 300, it seems like it stopped somewhere around there. Naturally, later on, just out of curiosity, I calculated what would have happened if I had held everything. 99% of my moves were right. The only thing is that I didn't hold on for that last 1%. So I switched to Light at the right time, even made a little profit, then switched to BNB at the right time, almost bought in at the bottom, but I just didn't have enough patience because I couldn't believe it was possible. And well, honestly, I was a newbie. Basically, I just took what I had at that moment.
I'd say that was a truly tough and impactful blow, one that most certainly profoundly affected your future.
Yeah, it really threw me off because I was buying in not at only $200 when it was at 6, I bought even more, and at that time salaries were really low. Well, I probably invested about $800,000, but that wasn't just from one paycheck. And then I actually stopped trading for a year, just stopped altogether. Then there was a correction, and after that, I started watching the alts, like for example Cake, that coin, and the Indonesian exchange too. At that time, it was listed at 1 cent, and then it shot up to $6. But I hadn't gotten involved in that earlier, and I decided to come back. Then, seeing those kinds of gains, of course I got fired up and decided to come back again to give it another shot.
Listening to your story, I hear that first there were binary options, then you bought access to a website, some training, then you kind of rode the altcoins like a passenger, took a break, and then came back again. So, can you tell us how it happened that initially you were trading with your own capital, and here we are on the Upscale channel, which is a prop trading company? How did it come about that you decided to get capital from the company? What happened?
What happened was I saw a link. At first, I saw it from one influencer, wanted to give it a try, but I was a bit hesitant about the whole thing because it was new to me. I really had no idea what prop trading was, and I had never even heard of it before. I ended up running into a scammer. I talked to him for half a year, for 6 months, and in the end, he scammed me. I invested money in an airdrop, and with that coin, I just couldn't withdraw anything. And I sold my apartment and kept the money in a deposit account because it was more profitable not to rent it out. Back then, we had a higher interest rate on deposits, so it made more sense to keep it there. So at first, I put in a small amount to test it out. And when he scammed me out of that amount, he actually gave it back. Naturally, that made me trust him. I started to trust him and then put in a larger amount, and then even more after that, and so on, into this. I'm smiling about it now because I found an opportunity like Upscale, where you can trade and so on. But otherwise, I'd probably be sitting here crying bitter tears somewhere in a corner, or maybe I wouldn't even be crying anymore.
So, am I right in understanding that before you came to Upscale, there was actually a tragedy? First, you lost your savings, and then it got to the point where you lost even more, including a place to live, and as a result, you ended up in a really tough situation. So, you have no capital of your own, and basically, for example, you've been trading for 17 years, but you can't actually trade because, well, you simply have nothing to trade with.
There's really nothing to trade with, and naturally about trading. Back then, I didn't really think much about it, but I didn't see any other options. And when I saw the opportunity to trade not with my own capital, but with someone else's, while investing just a tiny amount and only needing to prove my skills, it caught my attention. Experience wasn't an issue for me, so I wasn't losing anything, and somehow I had to get out of my situation. Of course, yeah. Roughly speaking, you could either cry over your success, pardon my language, or get upset, or not get upset at all. I had almost given up, but then I thought, if not me, then who? No one else would help, so I even asked my friends for advice. Just like everyone else, I had loans, debts, a mortgage, and so on. Little by little, I managed to save up $18 for my first account. Well, since I was working, in short, I managed to bring it up to the fund level, and all I had left to do was withdraw. At that point, I just needed to withdraw $24. But then, of course, the debts, loans, and so on caught up with me. Bankers started calling and all that. Because of all the stress, I just couldn't trade properly, basically. I took on too much risk with that account and ended up losing it. At the same time, I also completed the demo fully, and they gave me another account. So basically, I blew two accounts of $1,000 each at the same time. One was a bonus from Upscale for passing the demo, and the other was with my own money. And of course, I realized that with the amount of time I was putting in, and with this $1,000 account, I wasn't going to solve my problems. You either need to go bigger, save up more, or not start at all. The income from it is less than what I make at my job. So I either need to take more prop accounts. Well, not just either, but really take more prop accounts, or just not trade at all and look for other ways to solve my problem. And
Can you tell me, did you have any doubts at all about taking the challenge on Upscale? If so, what were they? And why did you decide to go for it anyway?
well, of course I had doubts. Why did I have them? Because this is something new for me. People are naturally afraid of anything new. But, excuse my language, I was like a cornered dog. I didn't really have much to lose. Naturally, this kind of opportunity attracted me. I read through all the documentation they had, tried out the minimum amount, and saw that it showed up in my balance. Yeah, I didn't withdraw it, and even the $600 I deposited wouldn't have much of a difference for me anyway. We're talking about amounts like $2, $3, $5, or even $10,000. Those kinds of sums, or just 600. Honestly, it wouldn't have made any difference at all. That's it. That's why I decided to try Upscale. And let me mention one more thing. Before this, I read something from an influencer. He's been trading for more than a year now, and he has a big following on his channel. And honestly, I trust him. Not only did I read the documentation myself, but I also got his recommendations. He tested it out himself, gave it a try. Yeah, so I decided to give it a shot.
Basically, your first attempt was a failure. And why was that? So, when you had your initial account, you already reached the funded phase, right? Unfortunately, you lost it because of your own mistake. Why didn't you give up after your very first loss? What motivated you to keep going? Well,
It was my experience with failure that motivated me. For me, losing 1,000 wasn't really that much. Actually, I had personal accounts before, and there was more money involved than just $1,000. But I had nowhere else to go, and I understood that it was just a single mistake. The psychological factor played a role here. Overall, I was making steady progress, and if it weren't for the psychological issues I couldn't resolve, I would have kept trading calmly. I understood what the mistake was, and I knew how to fix it. Basically, I was calm. The only thing was, I understood what I needed. I had to somehow solve the problem with the banks, the debts, the loans. When I partially solved it, when the calls stopped, when I started to think calmly and objectively, I began to trade normally again.
we've already heard that your current salary level is indeed quite low, and frankly, quite insufficient.
By local standards, it's normal, but by Russian standards, yeah, probably not very high.
Right. So basically, you had loans and debts, but you still came to Upscale and took an account 50 times bigger than your original one.
Yeah, that's right. Here, I have to say a big thank you to my mom, because honestly, I couldn't admit it until the very end. I sat there, trying to solve the problem. I was looking for a second job, and so on and so forth. But banks don't have patience. They don't wait. They call and hound you every day from a dozen different numbers. So all my friends, whether they could help or not, or just didn't want to, and so on, the closest person to me turned out to be, of course, my mom. So I talked it over with her, and we mapped out a general strategy. Of course, I didn't tell her everything, but I knew and believed in myself. Since it wasn't my first time bouncing back, I had some successes. There were times when, in just a week, I traded against the trend and managed to turn $200 into $2,000. That took about a month, and those were some crazy risks. There were, but I raised it. I knew that I could.
How did it end? Or is your $50,000 bill still ongoing? This is what happened. I take it you completed the challenge, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
And then you had a payout. Yeah.
But that's the best part.
See, you got a smile on your face right away. Come on, tell us.
First, I completed the account, got fully funded, and made $4,200 in trades. The only thing was, I was just waiting for that payout. I managed to fit within the limit in 14 days, completed everything, and made it. Oh wait, that's not true. There was one situation where they helped me fix a technical error in Telegram. And because of that error, I stopped trading for 10 days. Actually, I lost the account. I lost the account because of a technical error. 10 days went by and I contacted support. Thankfully, support said they'd test everything and so on. But at that moment, I thought, I had another phase then when my hands were shaking, and at that point,
I felt like such a fool. Basically, you got pushed away, thrown out, and then you got screwed over here too.
yeah, I don't know, it was just one failure after another, like some endless streak, seriously. So I wrote to support and said, look, this is my only account. I don't have any others. Please help me figure this out. I don't know what to do, and so on and all that. They replied, yeah, we'll look into it. I waited a week. Then the second week started. So about 10 days went by. And I thought, well, honestly, I don't have much to lose, so I'll write again. I wrote to support, and said, well, when are you going to resolve the issue? Just let me know yes or no, so I don't have to keep waiting and worrying. I already started looking for other ways to solve the problem. So they told me, yeah, we'll double check, and well, I don't know, I guess they just forgot about me. Just completely forgot. On the very day I reminded them, they said, yes, we need to do a back test and so on. And that evening, I just got this. They returned the account, and I thought, thank the gods. They returned the account right when we were on support, and it was the perfect time to go long. It was literally day for day.
Initially, as I understand it, throughout this whole journey, you didn't really believe that this could actually work. So the moment comes when your 14-day period is over, and now you have $4,200.
Well, for now, it's just numbers on the screen.
Numbers on the screen, yeah, but they do show up in your interface. So what happened next? Can you share your emotions, doubts, and overall, how did it all go?
Well, my first reaction was, did it really work? My second reaction was, I still don't believe it, at least not until I withdraw the money and can actually hold it in my hands. I've heard too many fairy tales in my life. I have a friend from Russia too, who's in my group, who helped me out, kept track of my stats, and so on. I asked him to help me, even though I could have withdrawn it myself, but at that moment I was really doubting myself, despite the fact that I had made the trades. The whole situation was weighing on me psychologically and emotionally, so I ended up asking him to withdraw it to Telegram. Even though I had withdrawn before, it was always to Tron. I had never used Telegram for this before, but he had more experience. So I asked him to help me. He ended up transferring it to his own wallet first, and then sent it to me. And they told me to wait 2 days. I thought, seriously, how much longer do I have to wait? I was already fed up, but I decided to be patient. I thought, that's it, I'll just let it go, and went to work. I was working at my job. Drawings and so on and all that during lunch. Around lunchtime, I checked Telegram and it popped up that my payout had been sent. I immediately started messaging my friend saying, okay, it all went through, now send me my money. He sent everything without any problems, and literally about 5 minutes later, everything came through really fast. When I saw the money in my wallet, I realized it was real, that you could actually withdraw it. But when I withdrew it to my card, I was even more convinced that the money was really there and wasn't going anywhere. I was really happy because I could immediately pay off 2 problematic loans, so that others wouldn't call me either. To pay specifically and exclusively for the current monthly subscription plan.
Mandatory payment.
Yes, definitely, the payment. And then with the second payment, I started trading more calmly. No one was calling me, bothering me, or anything like that.
And as far as I know, at first you have this storm of emotions because it really worked, because your efforts finally paid off. And they paid off, not just once. There was a second payout too.
The first time, it was 4,200. After the 20% commission, it came out to about 3,100 or 3,200, something like that for you. I don't remember exactly. The second time, I actually did really well and made $8,500.
Listen, you could build a house with that. Well, theoretically, at least a little shack. A little shack.
I made that much, but then I switched to longs for some reason. Started reading all sorts of trading gurus and channels again, which I've now deleted once more. And I had a really long losing streak, like 15 or 16 trades in the red. Basically, out of those $8,500, I dropped down to 2,200. Basically, it was just stop after stop. Out of habit, I kept going long, kept looking for long entry points, but the market had already turned around, and everything I caught back then was just a bounce, not a trend, basically.
Yeah, not the main move.
Yeah, not the main move. And then I stopped. That's when I made a withdrawal. Took out about 1,750 more. Something like that. At that point, I decided I'd buy a $100,000 account. By the way, I'm currently working on it, still in the first phase. Well, I've already made it through half of the first phase.
If I had some biceps, I'd flex like this and be like,
The second time, it was calmer, more methodical. Even the losing streak, which was 13, 13, 16. It didn't break me at all. I knew my strategy worked. I just needed to rest more. Let me share another personal moment with you guys. Something quite significant that happened to me. Even though I've diligently read more than just one book by Schwager and so on, those truly foundational and widely recognized so-called Bibles of trading, as they are often called, the essential trading Bibles and all that important material. Until you go through all these things yourself, in your own mind and heart, as far as I'm concerned, you'll keep making the same mistakes anyway. It says the trend is your friend, but still, I have a curious mind and I just have to test it myself. I don't know about others, but everyone who's been in my group and so on, they all went through making mistakes. There wasn't a single person who was different. No one learned from others' mistakes. Everyone wanted to check for themselves whether it works or not. So psychology actually accounts for about 70% of it. Then roughly 15%, the trend matters. Even the trend doesn't matter that much. 15% is the trend, and about 10% is risk. Management accounts for another 5%, and your strategy makes up the last 5%. If you really break it down, strategy hardly matters at all. The main thing is psychology and risk. That's what makes up the lion's share. The rest is just so-so. And
But look, you just said that a trading strategy only affects the result by 5%. But I just can't help but ask you. Actually, I have to ask you. Can you show us how you actually trade? Because you and I have already talked about the fact that you have a lot of experience, that you've actually done this, and you've done even more. People heard that you made $5,000 through your skill. When you have this much, then it became this much, and then this much, just like that, step by step. Yeah? And I think everyone would be interested to actually see. How does this actually work? So let's move over to the chart together. The view rating, or maybe in Vausal, and you'll show us everything.
alright, I'll switch to the daily time frame and show, for example, the Bitcoin trend, how I highlight important areas. Of course, I have 1,000 lines here, but I also have a cleaner version. A chart where you can look at it without all this clutter. And honestly, this is my first time on a Mac, so it's not very convenient for me. So guys, don't judge me too harshly. If anything, I'll try to find a chart with fewer lines. Here, this one is a good better.
All right, here it is. Here it is, looking good. Looking good. What? The picture. A picture of what? Yeah, go ahead. Tell us what's going on here.
Let me try to bring it up on the screen completely so it doesn't get stretched out too much. I'll make it a bit smaller. So this is Bitcoin. Here, the support and resistance zones are marked. There you go. Marked. All the ones I need, so they don't clutter things up too much. This isn't marked by a single line, but by zones. Because it often happens that when there's just a specific line, the price doesn't quite reach it, and you end up missing out on a position. That's why it's sometimes important to open longs and shorts in several positions, or to enter at some kind of average price.
So, how does your trading day start? Like when you first open the chart, what happens?
My trading day starts with looking at Bitcoin first. Bitcoin is my main guide, the one that leads the altcoins. And without it, I don't even start any analysis. I look at whether it's at support or resistance. At the moment, we're at resistance. I'll try to zoom in so you can see why this is resistance, or support. Here we've hit this level, this accumulation. Let me try to point it out here. And right now, I'm kind of in a waiting mode and not making any big moves. I closed
Positions from this morning.
Now, there's a chance, most likely, that we'll either reach 102 or drop back down to retest 85. Judging by how slowly we're crawling up, most likely we'll see a correction, but not down to 85. We'll pull back to the lower zone to 91 or 90,000 for a retest. First and foremost, I look at Bitcoin, then I check out the altcoins, since they're more volatile, and focus on the altcoins. I also look for situations like, for example, if I'm shorting Bitcoin, then I look for altcoins that have reached resistance and then watch for their reaction, meaning I pay attention to the price action. I watch the candles, the 4-hour candles. I always trade on those. The chart is the 4-hour time frame, and sometimes the 15-minute one. I analyze the trend on the 4-hour chart. I don't enter yet. I keep analyzing the trend on the 15-minute chart as well. That's when I start looking for an entry, focusing on price action and also on the volume shown below, as I did before. I also used the stochastic RSI before, and I still use it now. Sometimes I use it, but honestly, it doesn't really matter much to me. The only thing I use are divergences and convergences. For those who know, divergence is when the price moves apart, and convergence is when the price comes together. Right now, I don't have it on my chart, so it doesn't interfere with my trading. Honestly, most of the time, indicators just get in the way. They always lag behind, or some of them give false signals. Basically, the price itself is the real indicator.
Wise words, truly wise words. I'm curious. How would you describe your trading style? I mean, is it day trading, scalping, swing trading, or intraday?
I'm actually used to intraday, but I lean more towards upscale. So I'm used to day trading. I can hold the position for up to a week or two, but it's really hard to go upscale because I have to recalculate the risks every time. Get up before the new day starts. I get up at 4:50. At 5, a new day begins, and I recalculate the risks. If we stay at about the same level and don't move sideways, I keep the position open. So we've grown a little bit. Naturally, my price is fixed not at the entry point, but at the point where the day closed. And if we've gone up a lot, I want to emphasize to everyone that even a break even can get you liquidated. That's why I partially lock in the position, or sometimes close it completely.
I want to highlight this for everyone who isn't aware, or for those who are new. We have reporting periods in place. Each reporting period ends exactly at 12 o'clock a.m. Greenwich Mean Time every day. And accordingly, from that moment, your risk parameters are updated. So, Anton ends up getting up at 4:50 a.m. local time. Just to be clear, that's morning, not afternoon, to recalculate his risks. In other words, he gets up on purpose to keep an eye on his account. That's right, isn't it?
Because this experience cost me way too much. That's why It's better if I double check everything. Like they say, measure 7 times, cut once. And to end up in the same mess again, taking the hard way.
So, could you also highlight for us? Because from what I've heard, it seems like this is the case. You like to open long positions, right?
Yeah, I do like opening positions. But I actually make more money on shorts, even though my mindset is more geared toward long positions.
Yeah, well, lately our market has been, let's say, bearish. We hit a peak, and for about 2 months now, we've been in a downtrend. What was truly the most significant and challenging part about transitioning to a new trading style or methodology for you personally, or approach that you encountered?
The hardest part was recalculating risk from scratch. Every time, knowing how much to cut from a position, how much to keep, or whether to close it entirely. That was the most difficult part. Because, for example, my standard take profits used to range from about 20% to 150%. And if I hadn't switched to Upscale, I would have just held some positions for months. So now I take smaller moves, but it's more consistent. I also had to adjust to the trend because my eye was more trained for it. For longs, I had to adapt and specifically look for entry points for shorts. So now I look for short entry points at the peaks instead of looking for long entries at the lows.
We talked about Bitcoin, and now I see you have some other coin on your chart. Why we open it?
This is the net coin. First, I look at Bitcoin, and then I check which coin is at resistance. I zoomed out to show the bigger picture. Then I'll go into more detail and zoom in. So now we've switched to NER, and I'm expecting the price to move roughly into this zone. That is around $1.15 to $1.20, or about 50 cents per NER. Right now, this is the zone I marked. We haven't broken through it, just approached it. The zone is marked with these rectangles. I'll try to make it larger so it's easier to see, and then I'll switch to another time frame. For now, we're looking at the 4-hour chart, and as we can see, we've already bounced off this zone. Judging by where the 4-hour candles are right now, here was the first touch. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse as I move it around. So we dropped down to $1.60, then came back up, and now I think the decline will continue. Because Bitcoin went up, but none of the altcoins moved. Even Bitcoin's move was bigger than many of the alts. We've literally been watching this over the past few days, and if you look at Bitcoin dominance, it started to rise, and I'm expecting it to reach around 60%. We'll come back. So most likely I'll keep shorting all these lines. And just to clarify for beginners, These trend lines and so on, they're mainly for me. For some people, they might not work. For others, they might. This isn't the main thing. When you're confused and don't know whether your trend is up or down, it's easier for some people to use moving averages. For others, it's easier to draw a trend line. And for someone else, the standard, most basic method might help. Everything is built on this, determining the trend. For example, if the trend is bearish, then each high becomes lower, and each low becomes lower. I take a simple pencil and carefully draw along the prominent peaks. Let me provide you with a clear example, where a distinct triangle is precisely drawn. Here it is, a perfect wedge, a truly beautiful and well-defined wedge. By the way, I really respect chart patterns, but on their own, they don't work. They only work when they meet support and resistance. In other words, supply and demand. The higher the demand, the higher the price goes. The lower the demand and the higher the supply, the more the price falls. It's simple. Whenever we get confused, we go back to the basics and reread about support, resistance, supply, and demand. There's nothing complicated about it, and anything extra actually just puts you in a box that limits your trading, and most likely that would be wrong. Chances are you'll just confuse yourself even more. And one more thing for beginners, don't overtrade. Being in the market 24/7 won't do you any good. It will only cloud your mind, and you won't be able to see the bigger picture. You'll probably just see things locally, and then you'll end up blaming yourself.
I completely support you on this, because you always need to approach any task with a clear head. And speaking of clarity, let's proceed and navigate immediately into the Upscale platform. And what I want to observe and review right here in this section is your valid certificates.
Guys, don't get upset if anything. I'm just searching slowly here. I also borrowed this MacBook from a friend, actually from a colleague. It's my first time using it, and I hadn't used laptops at all before. I still have a regular one for now, so it might take me longer to find things.
You know what? While you're searching, let me ask you something. So you don't have your own computer right now. So what happened?
Like they say, trouble never comes alone. One problem came and opened the floodgates for more. Basically, my primary computer completely burned out right at the precise moment I was truly starting to actively trade. That's precisely why I consistently come to work early each morning and diligently open up my personal TradingView platform while absolutely no one else is yet around in the office.
So you do it on the sly at work.
Yeah, on the sly, but my work hours haven't started yet. I have 30 minutes to get things in order, see what I can and can't take, and make a list of coins I've got my eye on. So I check them out, and then I go home with the marked zones. I write it down on a piece of paper. Sometimes I just open TradingView on my phone, but the main thing is you just can't do a proper analysis on your phone. Even when I try to analyze on my phone, my entry and exit points end up being different. So it just doesn't work out well at all. That's why I do my analysis at work first, where I can see the volumes. By the way, I even pay close attention to the volumes too. If there was some kind of breakout, but there wasn't any volume, and the volume bars keep getting smaller and smaller, then most likely it's a false breakout. I try not to trade during those moments. I always wait for a price action engulfing pattern or a certain flat range so I can enter at that resistance or support level. When the buyer themselves show strength, that's when I join the movement, like right now. So if we look at the market, the cycle, we analyze together that there's resistance at 93,000 to 95,000. If you look at the 4-hour chart, there are wicks, a very large shadow, a really big one on the 4-hour, and with about a 70% probability. The fact that we're going to cover this candle, so I'm more inclined to short than to long, although this morning I was looking more towards long. But seeing how Bitcoin isn't breaking through, I just joined the movement myself. I'm not making anything up, not building any illusions, just joining the movement as usual, and there's nothing complicated about it.
Just look at this beauty and how much ground we've covered. 1,000 and 50,000 have been passed, and another 50,000 have been crossed. And here are the certificates. Let's open the most interesting ones.
The ones with the fattest certificates or payouts.
Right there, where the money comes from, the payout.
The first one is 3,200, but actually it was 4,200. Naturally, there's a commission fee. By the way, there was an update. I want to mention this. There was an update where you could check a box. And there you could get up to 90% of the profit. I didn't check that box just because I wasn't paying attention, since the update had just come out and I happened to be making a withdrawal of profits at that time. I was so happy to withdraw my profit that I quickly bought 100,000 from my account and didn't notice that I hadn't checked the box. That's what happened. Well, I plan to move up to 200 next, and then I'll definitely have it. The box will be checked 100%.
Hey, that sounds awesome. Sounds awesome. But I want to, just a little bit. You can go ahead and open the second certificate, and while you're doing that, I'll ask you a question. So, your situation is that you don't have your own computer, right? You got scammed by fraudsters, so you can really only do things on your phone. So basically, you go to your workplace, meticulously analyze absolutely everything on your dedicated work computer, carefully write it all down on a physical piece of paper, and then, after returning home, you open your important trades from your personal phone. What exactly do you see as the significant advantage of working in such a particular manner? I mean, on the one hand, it's unpleasant and inconvenient, but are there any advantages to this approach?
The only advantage is that I don't have to rush or hurry when making these decisions. Sometimes, though, the entry point and the price movement happen right while I'm at work. So sometimes I'm even on the go. Already on the bus, I see that we've hit a certain price and I need to short or go long. Basically, the movement was confirmed, there was an engulfing, and so on. Sometimes I can even open trades right on the bus that workers take to get home. Then, once I'm home, I can fully check everything. I also have the trading mobile app and so on, so I can see how the trade is moving. And then during a break, I switch to the desktop version. And by watching it,
Do you think it's fair to say that it was because you waited and didn't jump into the market right away? If you had entered the market the very second you saw something, could that have affected your success?
yes, that definitely affects your success. What I mean is, let me repeat. I trade on the daily, 4-hour, and 15-minute charts. Always, I trade like that. Well, in 99% of cases. Of course, there are some impulsive trades, just like everyone else. That's true. I admit it, and I'm gradually working on fixing it. Mostly, well, not always, but for the most part, I make decisions when the 4-hour candle closes. The 4-hour chart is my main tool for analysis. That's the moment when I understand whether the market has reversed or will continue its movement. So I focus specifically on price action. I compare the 4-hour candles and I watch how the momentum slows down, like a big candle, then a smaller one, then even smaller, and so on. And if these candles, after the big one, gradually all turn into wicks. The first candles, as they say, the mother candle, some people call it that, and the candle bodies keep getting smaller and smaller. And the wicks, for example, if I'm shorting, the wicks keep making new lows each time, meaning the highs get lower and lower. And then, when a 4-hour candle gets engulfed, I enter the trade calmly. I'm confident that in 90% of cases, I'll reach my entry point, or at least partially. I'll lock in some profit partially.
I cannot possibly disagree with your point of view, but at the very same time, I simply cannot resist asking you to please open up that significant $50,000 certificate once again, the one you were specifically assigned to manage. Upscale gave you $50,000 to trade with. How truly significant is that particular amount? And what genuine, tangible value can proprietary trading actually offer to regular, everyday people?
As for the significance of the amount, let me just convert my salary into rubles. If the ruble is about 6.5 to the tenji right now, my current salary is over 350. If you divide that by 6, well, roughly by 6, that's about 50-something thousand rubles for me.
$500.
Yeah, $500. Well, just think about it. I'll spend about 80% of those $500 on food, utilities, and so on. Basically, nothing will be left over. As you all have noticed, it's the same in all CIS countries. Let's not get into politics, war as they call it, or localization and all that. Everyone has problems because of this politics. Trump is putting pressure with his tariffs and so on. That's why everything is getting more expensive, inflation is rising, and that's why trading with my own capital, I just wouldn't be able to. Or maybe I would trade, but I'd be worried about every single position. It's exactly Upscale that gives me the opportunity to start with a smaller deposit, meaning I can buy a challenge and prove my skills. Moreover, I've already proven it once, and I'm sure I can do it again. It's like once you've done the splits.
Or learn to ride a bike and never forget how. Maybe you'll fall down along the way, but you won't forget how.
You realize that you have experience to rely on, and that your strategy, your approach, has worked before and still works now. Maybe someday in the future things will change, but if they do, I'll adapt as well. You shouldn't fight the market, but rather adapt to its movements. That's why sometimes I have to break myself, swallow my pride, and just trade with the market.
Yeah, I also want to go back to the amount, like it was elementary math. So let's say I get $50,000, and for example, my monthly income is $500. So in total, in just 100 months, which is about 8 years, I could actually save up that amount. But then, of course, there's the situation where you need to set money aside. You have to spend on housing, maybe entertainment, and it's just basic math. It doesn't add up. And it turns out that instead of saving for 8 years, you might need 20, 30, 40 years. Or maybe you won't be able to save that much in your entire life.
First of all, I want to say thank you, a big heartfelt thank you, because honestly, I would have been dealing with this problem for years, maybe at least 5 years with my salary. Yeah, maybe I would have found some other solution, but why would I need another solution if I have this trading? Well, sometimes I even address it formally because sometimes it really gets on my nerves. Sometimes, honestly, I just want to quit, but still, the opportunities it offers. There are things you just can't achieve at work, and I'm really grateful to Upscale for giving me the opportunity to get in. I'm not just thankful that I made it through. I'm grateful that there are moderators who actually listen to our opinions. It's really important. I want to emphasize this important point. All the dedicated staff members who consistently support us by constantly improving the platform and diligently addressing any technical issues that can be effectively solved. Perhaps it is because this is a relatively young and developing platform, but it truly brings traders together in a collaborative environment, and gradually, step by step, it thoughtfully adapts to our specific needs and preferences. And maybe not everyone does this, but I personally try my best to be as helpful as possible to the platform, because for me, frankly, if I'm being honest, it gave me a second chance. That's why I agreed to do the interview when Alexander messaged me in the chat. I said yes. I said, yes, of course, yes, this isn't some kind of advertisement or anything like that. It's simply my way of saying thank you, that I can participate in some way, make my own small contribution to the development of this platform.
This is truly valuable because we're highlighting the journey of someone who has gone through exactly what we talk about on our YouTube channel and on Twitter. We also cover this in Telegram, and so we show everything as it really is, that there are times of growth, there are setbacks, and sometimes there are really tough falls. Yes, so this is really valuable because we're showing the journey of a person who has gone through it all from start to finish. Not without setbacks, not without periods of growth, and we show how it really happens. I'm more than sure that the viewers watching us right now, first of all, I'd like to ask everyone to like this video and subscribe to our channel so we can create even more content. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because we're highlighting things that could really happen to any of you, and maybe some of you will relate to Anton's situation. I want to get back to the value here of prop trading, and to look at it not just from the singular perspective of how it actually truly maximizes or significantly increases your overall trading potential and capabilities, your own, simply because your budget increases. So 1% of $1,000 is $10, but 1% of $200,000, that's already $2,000. But still, it's the same everywhere, 1%. I'm curious, is prop trading psychologically or emotionally any different from traditional trading with your own deposit? Or am I just telling fairy tales there?
You're not trading with your own money. I mean, yes, in a way you are trading, but you put down 1% for this challenge. If you've passed before, then there's a high chance you'll pass again, and you won't have to use your own funds. So basically, you're minimizing your risks. Our job as traders isn't just to see where the trend is, where the flat is, and so on. Our main task is to keep an eye on risk. The market has always been there, and it will be there before you, after you, and so on and so forth. There will always be situations where you can make money. It's never like, boom, everything's gone for 10 years. So how did trading on a prop account affect me? It taught me that I can avoid exceeding my risk limits, but at the same time, 1% of $100, or say $1,000, which I would have traded, at most I would have made a few bucks or maybe 1,000 if I really pushed it. If I traded $1,000, that's just 10 bucks. But if I'm trading 1% of 50,000, that's already $500. That would be 50% of a deposit I wouldn't even be able to enter with. And in probably 99% of cases, the first factor would get liquidated. You don't feel the pressure that it's your own money. Just a little bit. Of course, unless you fail the challenge. The second factor is that you can not only lower, but also keep the same risks. 1% and so on. By the way, I usually go in a lot heavier, but that's not the point. I always keep track of where I can enter and where I can't afford to. The point is that you enter with the same percentage, but not with $10, but now you're entering with $1,000. So naturally, your profit will be higher, and the time you spend as a person, the hours, as people used to count them, are much more valuable and significant in the sense. So for example, in an hour, or let's say in a day, on my own account, I would have earned just a few dollars, say $5, but here I would have made $500. Basically, my day becomes much more valuable. And secondly, psychologically, I no longer feel the pressure of trading with my own money, because I still need to buy food, pay bills, and so on. And you get all nervous. Well, maybe not exactly nervous. Of course you calculate everything, but you still worry about your trades. Even here, despite those 16 trades, when I was explaining in the chat to someone who didn't trust Upscale, I sent him screenshots, photos, everything. But still, if a person doesn't believe, there's no way you'll convince him. Excuse my language. He didn't believe that you could actually withdraw money here. I said, look, the fact that I had 16 losing trades in a row, anyone else would have been thrown off by that, I think. But I was calm about it. Why was I calm? Because I trade and I already have a safety cushion built up. I built it up myself. At one point I had 52,000. I know that I can still allow for a certain drawdown and so on, and still end up in profit. That's why I'm calm, and it's exactly prop trading that gives you this opportunity.
So what do we have right now? We have the fact that you've received 2 payouts. From Upscale, and
The third one is on the way.
So the third one is being prepared as well. For how much?
Well, so far it's $1,500.
So far, $1,500. Well, I wish for it to be 10 times more. So what are your plans going forward? I mean, right now you're trading with 50,000, but will you keep trading after this? Maybe you'll take a bigger account. What are your plans in general?
Let me repeat myself once more. Maybe my rambling makes it hard to see. Maybe it's not clear what I'm saying. I'm not speaking in bullet points. I'm just letting all my emotions out because I really want to share as much of my experience as possible. So I opened 2 accounts with profits, and I had planned in advance that I would take them. I wanted to take the second account for 200, but because of that series of trades, I didn't take it for 200. I took it for 100,000. $100,000! And there, I'm already planning to go through it and gradually, little by little, reduce the risks. So the amount will stay the same, but the percentage per entry will be lower. Right now, for example, my trades are at 4.5% per entry. Given that volatility is low, I calculate my stop based on daily drawdown, which is about 1% of my total deposit. So it comes out to about 1.2 to 1.3%. But when I see that, the situation is unfavorable and the market is turning around, I don't argue with the market. I just close with whatever I have. And if anything, especially when there are sharp drops, on that day, I don't try to look for entry points, even if we've reached a support level or something like that. Because in 90% of cases, markets don't usually stop in a V-shape. They stop, make a rebound, many dead cat bounces, then they retest, and only then maybe the setup gets confirmed. Then you can enter.
I hear you. Overall, I can only wish you good luck with your new account. That's for sure. And besides that, since I'm wishing you luck, I'd like you to give some advice from yourself. To those traders who are listening to us and who are just thinking about starting their journey in prop trading or trading in general, what advice could you give them?
I would advise everyone who is just starting to work with prop trading. Mainly right now we're talking about Upscale. Yes, specifically in Upscale. Try skill, don't rush. At first, no one is rushing you. There's nothing like that here. It's not required. You don't have to follow any strict, harsh rules. There are only two rules we have to follow: drawdown, daily, and total. For a regular account, it's 5%. For the accelerated one, it's 5% daily and 10% total. I'm trading on the accelerated account, 50,000, so my risks are even stricter. That means less than a 3% daily drawdown and a 6% total drawdown. So here's my advice to you. Start by practicing on a demo. Get some practice, make your mistakes. No one's rushing you. Then, when you feel more or less confident, when you've had a streak of profitable trades, let's say, I don't know, up to 10, you've gotten the hang of it, then open an account. Open an account, but no one's telling you to go for a huge account or anything like that. Start with the minimum. Right now, the minimum is 5, right?
Yeah, the minimum is 5,000.
Go for 5. It won't take much money from you, even if you just get the minimum, but set it aside from 2 paychecks. Well, just look at me. I'm not a millionaire or anything, but I found a way to do it. And then gradually move forward. The second thing I want to wish you is this. Don't rush, never rush. The market was here before you and will be here after you. If something pumped 150% somewhere, that doesn't mean it won't pump again later. Try not to fall for FOMO. And what will help you avoid it? FOMO is all about risk calculation. When you calculate in your head ahead of time how much you can earn and how much you can lose, in other words, you have a plan A and a plan B, and you accept these parameters and they're acceptable to you, that's the kind of risk you should take on a trade, no more. Don't overexpose yourself. I can afford it because for me it's psychologically comfortable. I've been through this more than once, so I can allow myself that. For example, today my trade was set at 9%, but the stop was very tight. I closed it with a profit, and I feel calm about it. But most people, most likely, will start to panic even at a 1% move, and so on. I'm saying this from my own experience. You always have to watch, to pay attention. Specifically, you need to find that point where you feel psychologically comfortable trading. That's the position you should be taking. You shouldn't be afraid to lose. So try things out, test, and don't rush. This is a long-term game. We're not sprinters, we're distance runners. The platform always provides technical support, and the moderators listen to us. Your main task is simply not to rush and to grow your capital. And one more psychological point. Don't delay your first withdrawal. Don't try to build up a big cushion right away. As soon as your 14 days are up, withdraw right away. Once you feel the money in your hands, you won't want to gamble it away or lose it.
Wise words. And on that note, I want to thank you for the interview and for sharing your experience. Once again, I want to ask our audience to like and leave comments if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to our social media and channels, which you could find linked in the description. On that note, I want to ask you one last thing, the final question. What would you say to Anton, who was sitting at the computer back then and buying B&B for 3 hours? What would you tell him now? What would you say?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't scold myself, because experience is something you always need to have. I have already come to terms with who I was at that moment. I mean, if that moment hadn't happened, I wouldn't have ended up here, moving forward. It's all good, Anton. This is your first step. There is more to come. One victory won't be the end of it. As we can see, there will be more in the future.
And as I like to say, we'll see each other at the top. See y'all soon.
Take care. A big warm hello to everyone, once again.